Number 1. The quick draw duel at high noon almost never happened. That whole scene where two guys stand in a dusty street, glare at each other, and one draws faster. We have basically one clean, documented example in the entire Wild West. Wild Bill Hickok versus Davis Tutt, Springfield, Missouri, 1865. And they weren't 10 paces apart, they were 75 yards apart, and it was over a pocket watch. That's the whole genre. One guy, one watch, one time. Every showdown you've ever seen in a Western is Hollywood cosplaying an incident that basically never got a sequel. Number 2. The entire Wild West era only lasted about 30 years. Roughly 1865, end of the Civil War, to 1890, when the U.S. Census Bureau officially declared the frontier closed. That's it. 3 decades. That's shorter than the run of The Simpsons. The era we've been retelling stories about for 130 years lasted less time than the Kardashians have been on television. And we're getting even those 30 years wrong. Number 3. Cowboys were not overwhelmingly white John Wayne types. Historians estimate about 1 in 4 cowboys was black. A lot of them were formerly enslaved men who went west after the Civil War for the only job that paid the same regardless of your skin. About 1 in 3 cowboys was Mexican. Many were Native American. Hollywood took the most demographically diverse workforce of 19th century America and cropped it down to Clint Eastwood. One of the most inclusive jobs of its era, edited into the whitest movie genre we've ever made. Number 4. And this one is going to short-circuit at least one person at your dinner table. Wild West towns had way stricter gun laws than modern America. In Tombstone, in Dodge City, in Wichita, when you rode into town, you had to check your revolver at the sheriff's office or the livery stable in exchange for a token. You got the gun back on your way out. Dodge City had a giant billboard on the edge of town that read, "The carrying of firearms strictly prohibited." Today, in that same Tombstone, you don't need a permit to carry a gun on Main Street. Number 5. Cowboys did not wear cowboy hats. The classic Stetson didn't get invented until 1865 and didn't become fashionable in the West for years after that. Most cowboys wore whatever they could get: bowler hats, straw hats, leftover Civil War military caps, sombreros. Butch Cassidy, literally the most iconic outlaw in Wild West mythology. His most famous photo, the one you've seen 1,000 times, he's in a bowler. The same hat as an accountant in London. Number 6. And remember number 4. When I said the Earps were enforcing the gun ordinance, that ordinance is why the OK Corral shootout even happened. Except, the OK Corral shootout didn't happen at the OK Corral. It happened in a vacant lot on Fremont Street, about 90 feet away. The town called it the Incident on Fremont Street for years, until dime novelists showed up and renamed it after the more photogenic building next door. So the most famous gunfight in American history is famous under the wrong address. Real estate branding, Western edition. Number 7. Tumbleweeds are not native to America. They are Russian. The plant everyone associates with a dusty American ghost town, the visual shorthand for middle of nowhere USA, that's Salsala tragus, the Russian thistle, which showed up in South Dakota in the 1870s as a contaminant in a batch of Russian flaxseed and then rolled across the entire country in about 20 years. The iconic backdrop of every John Wayne movie is a Slavic invasive species. Every time a tumbleweed rolls across your screen, that's a foreign exchange student. Number 8. Real cowboys were not rugged millionaire lone wolves. Cowboy was a low-paying, extremely disposable manual labor job. Wages were around $1 a day, call it $3 a week for back-breaking, 16-hour work in dust, cold, heat, and stampedes. And the saddle they used often cost more than the horse they rode. So the guy in your favorite movie, the one with the steely gaze and the trusty steed, in real life he was mostly renting the horse. Number 9. The entire cowboy. The roping, the riding, the outfit, the vocab was invented by the Mexican vaqueros. And by invented, I mean invented. Lasso, rodeo, chaps, stampede, buckaroo, ranch, corral, all originally Spanish or Spanish-derived. The American cowboy is what happened when a bunch of guys from Texas walked over the border, watched vaqueros work cattle for 2 centuries, went
We should try that.
and then convinced Hollywood they invented it. The most American thing in American culture is a Mexican rental. Number 10. Most Wild West towns had lower murder rates than New York or Boston at the same time. In a typical frontier town, you'd get 1, maybe 2 killings a year. Many towns went years without one. The historian Robert McGrath studied it and found bank robberies, muggings, and serious juvenile crime basically didn't happen in most Western towns. The everybody shooting everybody all day version of the West is a movie thing. The real West was, statistically, a nicer place to raise your kids than downtown Manhattan. Number 11. The Pony Express, the legendary mail service galloping across the plains, only ran for 18 months. 1.5 years. That's it. From April 1860 to October 1861, the entire operation was killed by the telegraph. The second the wires reached the West Coast. 18 months of service, and it's still one of the top 3 things people associate with the Wild West, mostly because of a marketing hire named William F. Cody who put it in his stage show. We'll come back to that guy. Number 12. Women in the Wild West were not damsels waiting to be tied to train tracks. They were homesteaders running entire ranches, business owners, doctors, journalists, and in some cases, sheriffs and stagecoach drivers. Widows often kept the land after their husbands died and ran it, sometimes better than the guy they buried. Wild West women bought property in their own names in states where women in the East couldn't. Number 13. The entire mythology of the Wild West was manufactured in real time, while the Wild West was still happening. Dime novels, cheap paperback fiction started cranking out embellished cowboy stories in the 1860s. Buffalo Bill Cody launched his Wild West show in 1883, a traveling circus that dressed people up as cowboys and Indians for European audiences, and toured for the next 30 years. Actual gunfighters, still alive, were signing autographs of dime novels written about themselves, including exaggerations they knew were exaggeration. Wyatt Earp, real man, real tombstone lawman, lived all the way until 1929 and personally consulted on early Hollywood westerns before he died. He told film directors made-up versions of his own life. They filmed it, and now that's what you remember. The frontier officially closed in 1890. The myth about it started before 1870. And the myth has now outlived the actual era by about 100 years, meaning we've been telling stories about the Wild West at least 4 times longer than there was a Wild West to have. Let that sit on the table for a beat. Number 14. Jesse James was not Robin Hood. This is one people really want to be true, and I understand the appeal, but no. Jesse and his brother were former Confederate guerrillas who never stopped fighting the Civil War, just pointed it at trains and banks instead. They robbed civilians, killed employees, and kept all the money. The rob the rich to give to the poor story was PR, some of it invented and pushed by a Confederate sympathizer newspaper editor named John Newman Edwards who liked the vibe. Jesse James did not give money to the poor. Jesse James gave money to Jesse James. Number 15. Saloons were not just brawl bars, where the piano stops when the stranger walks in. They were basically the entire social infrastructure of the town. They were post offices, restaurants, hotels, informal courthouses, coffee shops, community centers, and yes, also bars. Men went there to read the mail, do business, hear the news, sit down out of the weather, and occasionally have a drink. The saloon owner hated brawls. They were bad for business. Number 16. Batwing doors were not standard. Those iconic swinging half doors are in like 3 saloons in the entire West, mostly in warmer climates. Most saloons had regular doors, because it turns out most places in America get cold in the winter, and half a door is a bad plan. The Batwings look great on camera. They don't keep the snow out. Hollywood picked the least practical door and made it the logo of an entire century. Number 17. Wagon trains did not circle up to defend against Indian attacks. The circle the wagons formation was almost never used for defense. What it actually was, an overnight corral. The pioneers would park the wagons in a rough circle, so their livestock, oxen, mules, cattle, couldn't wander off during the night. And Native American attacks on wagon trains were much rarer than movies suggest anyway. Most wagon train deaths were disease, exhaustion, or accidents with the actual wagons, because it turns out driving a giant wooden box across a continent is more dangerous than being attacked by anybody. Number 18. The thing that actually ended the Wild West was not the coming of the railroad, or the taming of the frontier, or a heroic sheriff. It was barbed wire, patented in 1874 by a guy named Joseph Glidden. Within a decade, ranchers had fenced off millions of acres of open range with the cheapest, ugliest, most boring product in 19th century America, and the open range cowboy driving cattle across unfenced land became instantly obsolete. The whole poetic era of the American cowboy was killed off by hardware store inventory. Every John Wayne character had his job automated by a piece of wire. Number 19. The cattle drive itself was not a galloping high-speed adventure. It was one of the most boring jobs in North American history. Cowboys moved cattle about 10 to 15 miles a day. That's about the pace of a slow walk, because cows walk slowly, and if you push them too hard, they lose weight, which is bad, because the entire point is delivering fat cows. So, 99% of the cowboy adventure was 3 months of eating dust behind a cow, in a straight line, chewing tobacco and thinking about nothing. Number 20. And Native Americans were not a single, faceless enemy waving tomahawks. There were more than 500 distinct nations across North America, different languages, different cultures, different political systems, different alliances. Some fought the U.S., some traded with it, some went to war with each other, some had their own cattle drives, and yes, some worked as cowboys, including on drives that ran through Indian territory with hired Cherokee, Choctaw, and Comanche hands. The Cowboys versus Indians story is not history. It's a marketing bundle invented by dime novelists and Buffalo Bill, so you could tell them apart on the poster, and that same poster is still what you're seeing when you think of the Wild West. Go correct a relative. Till next time, thanks for watching.